Hi, I'm David Hamburger, back with step 6 of my 6 steps to playing the changes on the blues. At this point, we've basically gone through all the main moves that you need to play over the changes on a 1-4-5, on the swing turnaround, and on the jazz blues turnaround. The one sound we haven't really dealt with is the diminished sound. And in a way, you can kind of get away with not dealing with this, but if you do incorporate it into your playing, it adds another dimension to what you're doing when you're playing on the jazz blues. So I think it's worth checking out. And the place where this sound comes in is if you're playing on a blues in B flat and you are on the 4 chord. When you're heading back to the 1, the chord progression will pass from the 4 chord through the sharp 4 diminished sound and back to 1 before going up to the 6 chord. So basically bars 5 and 6, or the beginning of the second line of the 12-bar blues. So 4, sharp 4, back to 1. And so in the key of B flat, that would be E flat 7 to E diminished, back to B flat. And because it's got a strong resolution from the sharp 4 diminished sound back to 1, it can lead you from that straight into that 6 chord. And so we're sort of working backwards. We took the turnaround of the blues and we changed it from 5-4-1 to 2-5-1. Then we preceded the 2-5-1 with the 6 chord. Now we're kind of looking at it like a whole long sequence that's going to go from the 4 to the sharp 4 to the 1 to the 6 to the 2 to the 5 and around the 1. So everything is kind of, one thing is resolving into the next thing, and it's this big cascade effect where everything starts to feel sort of inevitable as you go through the second half of the chord progression, which is kind of cool. So if we're up here and we're playing in B flat, here's B flat, and here's the 3rd, and here's the 5th, and here are some of the notes that work. Then our 4 chord is going to be here, E flat. And here's an E flat triad with the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, and the flat 7. And the simplest way to get to the diminished sound from here is we're going from the 4 chord to the sharp 4 diminished. So if we take the E flat triad with the flat 7, and then we raise the root a half step, but keep everything else the same, we get an E diminished triad. And so here's E, and relative to this note, we now have flat 3rd, flat 5, or diminished 5th, and diminished 7th. And so once again, here's the basic E flat 7 triad. And we raise that E flat to E and keep all the notes the same, and we get an E diminished chord, or arpeggio. And then if we want to fill out the scale tones, we just have to add a half step in below each chord tone. Or, and, so. Now this is still the root, not this, but this is just an easy way to visualize what the notes of the scale are. So those are the notes that we want, and we want them to come in context leading from 4 to sharp 4 diminished to back to 1. So there are a few different ways you can do it and a few different ways you can look at it. One thing that's kind of cool and convenient is to notice that from here, from B flat, the notes of the scale go like this. So there's the diminished 5th, and the diminished 7th, and the root with their half steps. But these notes should look familiar because it's also a B flat blues scale with the 6th down below, the 6th of B flat. So one way you can think about the diminished sound, the sharp 4 diminished, that you need to get is that it's just the blues scale based off the root of the home chord. So a B flat blues scale with this second in here. That'll give you the diminished sound. And then you can resolve it back to B flat. So you might have something like, and that would make a nice resolution from E flat, and then E diminished, and then B flat. And in that case, I'm playing, just relative to B flat, I'm playing the 6th and the root, and then like a blues lick, which again, relative to B flat would be root, flat 3, 4, flat 5, 4, flat 3, 4, flat 3, root 6, and then major third of B flat to root 5, 4, 3. Now you could also start from more of an E flat sound, because we've got a bar of E flat, and then climbing through E diminished, and then resolving again to the major third of B flat. So here I've got root in E flat on the 4 chord. I've got root 3, 5, and then here's the root, flat 3rd, diminished 5th of E diminished, and then into the 3rd, 4, 5 of E flat. So that's another way to do it. And then finally, let's see, maybe something a little more busy. So this is all E flat, 3, 4, flat 5, hammer on, 5, 6, 5, flat 5, 5, 6, and then here's diminished. And then we're going to outline this arpeggio like this. That's all chromatic pull-offs from the diminished 7th to the diminished 5th to the flat 3rd, and then diminished 5th, 3rd, root, diminished 7th. So, and then resolving to 3, 5, 4, 3, root, 5, major 7, root of B flat. So 1, 2 from E flat, diminished, so that's 3 different ways to look at going from 4, sharp 4 diminished to 1. Let me play them over the changes. So I've got a loop going that's going to go from 1, it's going to go from 4 to sharp 4 diminished to 1 up to 6. And I'll play through each one of these licks over that so you can just hear them in context over the changes. Here we go. Okay. And now starting from like a full sort of E flat sound. And finally, the busiest of the examples. All right, so that's what they sound like in context. Let me play through now a whole chorus of the blues. You can hear where this comes in, and I will continue out from there through the sound of the 6 and then into the 2-5. Just as sort of a heads up of where it's going to go. So if we're here, if we're on B flat, we could then go, there I'm going into the 6th chord, taking over the 1. So that's all 6. Here's 2, and then here's the blues. And that takes you all the way around. So we've kind of worked our way backwards all the way into the middle of the chord progression with all these different steps that we can include. So let me roll the track, whole chorus of the blues from the top, and put this in context. Okay, so that's how all of these different pieces come together. Now, when you listen to people who are playing, especially like blues-oriented jazz musicians playing over the changes, sometimes you'll hear all this stuff strung together. Sometimes you'll hear just a chorus or two where they're just playing the blues. Sometimes you'll hear, one element of these things, the altered sound brought in, the diminished sound brought in. Don't always hear all this together, and that's one of the great things about it, is that I think the best musicians who play in this idiom, you hear a lot of contrast between the way they use the blues and the way they use the changes. And again, like the changes are not something you have to use every time, they're not something you have to use all of those different elements at the same time. So as you go through these different lessons and these different examples, just be aware these are all different signposts that you can hit along the way, but the creative part comes where you make choices about which parts to include, which parts to leave out, and when and where to play them off of each other. Okay, so those are my 6 steps for playing the changes on the blues. I hope you enjoy working through these lessons, and if you want some more things to work on, you can go to my YouTube channel at fretboardconfidential.com and check out everything that's there. So thanks for watching. I'm David Hamburger, and I'll see you next time.